in order for something to see play, it has to be as good as the alternative.
I'm very glad you said that, because it's actually not good enough for it to be equal. It has to be better, right? It almost has to be strictly better. When I say strictly, I mean better in all situations, all the time, always. Why? Well, it's because there's actually a pretty big opportunity cost to changing your build in Guild Wars 2, for a lot of the player base anyway. Because if you say, okay, change to this build, you have to say, right, get a completely new gear set and completely learn a new build. So for something to actually be worth it changing and to actually grind the meta, particularly in Fractals, because you've got to gear agony resistance as well and infuse your gear, right? Because of that, it's even more of this initial opportunity cost. It has to be better. It can't actually be equal. It needs to be better. But we're buffing Triple Trouble to be harder than Su-1.
In a way, I think it's already harder than Su-1. I'm gonna be completely honest. I feel like Su-1, no, that's
because of the
not
hard
a dig
fail
at,
state, right?
Yeah. I feel like, no, that's not to say like, Su-1 is like super easy and stuff, because you do still need a decent amount of coordination to do it, but it's killable. I feel like with Triple Trouble, you need a guild to be organizing it, or you're never gonna get that kill.
What would be a good way to justify the investment in a really major rework of the map system? Like, what's the payoff from ArenaNet's perspective to do this?
Here's how you make everyone mad all at once, though. You sell them a gizmo.
Ooh.
That would be how
that has
they
a shooting
do it.
star but it's like 100 times cooler than the PvP ones.
Yeah.
And then whenever they go into a map, a list comes up of the other people in the map that they want to get, that they want to get into. And they get to like Grant. Yeah, they get to like Grant kill a person, and they're booted from the map, and then they appear over their corpse. And it's available in World versus World.
Yeah. Wow. We're here. And you know what? This is going to be a bit interesting tea time. Do you know why this is a special tea time? Because I think for the first time ever, we have got additional news to discuss during the starting soon screen. On the day itself. Very exciting. Specifically, for those that know. And I actually haven't decided yet. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to tease everyone here and do the balance stuff last, or if we just do it first, right? And just get into it so everyone kind of just gets it off their chest. We can get through that immediately. But anyway, welcome to Tea Time, everyone. It's on a Wednesday this time. Wow, isn't that weird? But don't worry, it's still the same thing. I've got Sneb here. I've got Emi here. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff. We got the surprise balance notes here for August 2nd. We've got a giant worm in the core game. Fractal's got rework. That's actually very controversial. Some people really hate the changes. Some people really like them. I mean, wow. What more could you possibly ask for when it comes to tea time, when it comes to content here, when it comes to patches in the game? Anyway, welcome to the show, Emi and Sneb. And you know what? Maybe let's make this a little frisky. Let's make it a little exciting.
Frisky.
What do you? Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. What do you guys want to do first? And I know Emi's excited. Chrono main, Mesmer main. Maybe we talk about the balance patch stuff first. But what do you think? Do we want to leap into it and go over these notes? Read the notes.
We can maybe do the balance preview first, since that's just like fresh on everyone's minds, and then we can segue into the boring stuff later.
Yeah, I like that. What do you think, Sneb? What do you think?
Yeah, do it.
Yeah,
Hit me with it.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, I'm ready. I'm mentally prepared.
Okay, so the first two, the big two set of changes here, they're looking at Mesmer and Warrior. And, they actually kind of told us exactly what they were going to do in the last set of notes. They said, hey, we're going to make Chronomancer's damage higher, and we're going to try and fix Warrior. That's more or less what they've said. And, well, we now have their attempt at doing this. With a few kind of coefficient changes to Mesmer, specifically aimed at support Chronomancer by the looks of that. And then we have some banner reworks there as well. And I'll tell you what, Emi, you are a resident Mesmer expert. I've seen the Google Doc. I have. I'm impressed. Okay? I've seen it's crazy. Why don't you go ahead and walk us through? What has happened here? What are they doing to Mesmer?
Okay, so I think I'm going to talk about Power Chronomancer specifically because I used to play a lot of that one, and there was a period of time where it was super, super dominant in the meta. Like pretty much all of the speedruns were carried by P-Chronos and all that kind of stuff. I think the damage here it's better, especially on Greatsword Chrono, which kind of sucks for me because I don't like Greatsword very much, but it's still a lot better than what it used to be. Like the increased damage is like pretty significant. Like we're talking like 1.0 to 1.8. That's almost double the amount. And then Phantasmal Berserker from 0.4 to 1.2. That's literally triple the amount. So obviously Greatsword is getting a lot of extra damage here. Sword gets a little bit more damage, and that's pretty good because in the sword focus dagger rotation, a lot of the damage comes from auto attacks. So even though the actual number is smaller, the increase will probably compound just because you're auto attacking so much. What I find really interesting is the improved alacrity. And just for context, it's like you said, I think this will really benefit I guess support chronos. It'll help their damage a lot because often in support chrono builds, assuming you're running like full diviners or something like that, and you're not doing something like super, super aggressive like STMP chrono, you're probably not going to be reaching crit cap anyways. So this improved alacrity just means that you're going to be doing more damage from the critical strike damage. And you brought it up earlier and behind the scenes, but kind of like just so everyone else knows this as well, this is not just 10% increased ferocity, it's 10% additive for total critical strike damage. So it's actually a lot higher than just if they had just given the trait like an extra 100 or 150 ferocity on the trait when you have alacrity and stuff. So that part is super, super cool. I think the unfortunate part is that crit is really, really hard to come by in this build already. With the danger time trait, you had to have the enemy with slow in order to get that. I think it's like extra 15%. It's a large amount. So unfortunately, you don't have that anymore. And to be fair, back in the day, it was really hard to get slow on the boss anyways, because classes that used to provide it a lot, like Dragon Hunter or Renegade or whatever else, people don't really play them all that much anymore, especially not on like the big power fights and everything. So it's you're gonna have to rework your build a lot. Like I think maybe even adding like, I don't know, thief runes or something, or I don't know, something to boost up that crit. Because I don't know the exact math, but 15% is a lot to make up. So that part is going to be a bit rough. But at the very least for support chrono, I think especially like with my group for Harvest Temple, we've actually tried to do support chrono memes before instead of Firebrand, and it does a lot of damage. I think power chrono does a lot of damage from a range on that fight. So could open up some more possibilities that way. But yeah, those are my general thoughts on it. Either way, damage seems to be a lot better because I think most people that still were clinging on to the old days of peak chrono didn't really run danger time anyways, just because slow was so hard to come by. So I myself included, I've been running the improved alacrity rotation instead anyways. So this is just a net buff for me. So
yeah. And, you know, it definitely is one of the big issues I think that support Chronomancer has. And honestly, I think that's what's holding quite a lot of the kind of slightly out of the meta support builds is they don't quite do enough damage, right? And like, even if we look at, say, the meme quickness warrior build right now, honestly, I mean, sure, like, is it the best build in the universe? Not really, but would it be playable if it did a fair bit more damage? Yes, obviously more on that in just a moment, I think. But, you know, like, I think Arena go like, yeah, you know, it gives quickness. How bad can it be? But then, well, actually, yeah, quite bad, actually, as it turns out. So I think looking at the damage here is definitely very important. I think Mesmer actually can bring quite a lot of utility to the table, like just by being Mesmer. So I think it's not necessarily lacking in that department. So targeting the damage, I think, is important. I think it's definitely worth bringing up the crit chance. And I presume they just didn't really have enough time to do everything they wanted to do this time. You know, they could have said maybe given some extra crit chance in dueling. That would make a lot of sense. Hey, look, that's the Fury trait line. It's like arms. That means there should be more crit chance, right? So that makes a lot of sense. We can go ahead and throw that in there. I think also one thing that particularly for the Alacrity Chronomancer build that I think a lot of Mesmers were looking for is making the wells a bit better as well. Some of the wells, maybe not the most exciting and good skills in the universe. So I think there's definitely a bit more work to be done here with Chronomancer. And in general, I feel like these changes, they're almost like surprisingly conservative, right? And this is something that we've seen a lot with Arena, I think in the last patch particularly, and it confuses me a little bit. Maybe I'm crazy, and I'm no game dev, chat, so maybe I shouldn't give my opinion on this. I'm not allowed. Illegal opinion incoming. But it's not like Boon Chrono has been destroying the metagame for like years now. I mean, obviously Power Chrono was pretty crazy in the high level meta for a period of time, and obviously when Chronomancer was literally the only thing that could give quickness and alacrity, it was really, really strong. But I mean, would it be really so bad if like Boon Chrono came back and it was really, really insane? Would it be a really big problem if like support Warrior was kind of busted for a while? I don't think so. I think it's really depressing when it's like, oh, Ada, look at this crazy new build. You can give quickness on Warrior now, and you do 14k DPS, right, while you're doing that, and you're like, wait. What do you mean? There's Mr. Firebrand. He does 30k and gives quickness and also heals and gives protection and gives stability at the same time and gives Aegis. And like, you give quickness, you'll be fine, right? You're fine there, Mr. Warrior. You're having a grand old time. And, like that. Yeah. I think this is something that I think Arena need to be mindful of. I feel like they could go a little bit harder in this regard.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the changes that they make they want them to seem permanent. Like they want to move the game towards this perpetually perfectly balanced, as all things should be, sort of like state. Whereas I know a lot of other games kind of do the exact opposite, where they rotate classes in and out so they become the flavor of the month. So then more people are inclined to try out new builds, new roles, new everything, that sort of thing. So I think it could be very interesting. I mean, right now, obviously, Mechanist is definitely flavor of the month. Guardian has been flavor of the month for a really long time. Yeah. Flavor of the year.
Flavor of the expansion.
There was a period of time again with like Mesmer was also like flavor of the 5 years or something like that. But it could be really cool if they like, this next 6 months during this balance patch, this specific class is like super overtuned. People have fun with it. And then the next balance patch comes around and then they kind of change it up. They're like, all right, gutting that class. Let's give this other class like some time to shine. But I think obviously there's like some danger with that as well, because like you don't want to risk like power creeping a lot of the fights, or like, it is a lot of like, I think there's a, I guess, inconsistency with that, right? It's like if your game is constantly changing for like this, so the new player experience might not be as good, or like, I don't know, all that kind of stuff. But it could be fun. I would enjoy that a lot. I would be okay with shelving my Mesmer if it meant that other classes got some love. So
yeah.
I'm just gonna drop some. I'm gonna drop some truth.
Oh my god.
This is gonna be maybe a little harsh, but I really don't think Chrono's gonna see that much more play.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I think unless specific people such as myself who are unable to let go of the past want to play it, I don't think that many people will go out of their way to learn a new class. I do agree with that. But I do think it's not even that it's a new class.
It's that it's too hard to play. I that's maybe sounds wild, but Chrono's too hard to play. When you take into account the continuum split and how it interacts with mechanics on various raid bosses and things. Like, if you continuum split at the wrong time, you're like, oh no, and then you're just gonna die, right? Like at Adina, that used to happen to me all the time. I'd be playing Chrono, and I'm like, oh, timing bad, instantly into the sand, I'm dead, right?
Yeah.
So I really don't think people will play it, because to get those numbers, it takes way more effort opposed to something like play mech, where you can play. If you're trying to pump quickness Firebrand is fairly easy to play. I don't know. It's just it's still too difficult for most people to play, I think. I don't think anyone, like, you look at the graph, how there's all the like percentage of teams that have it. I think Chrono's going to stay relatively the same. It might increase a little bit.
I do agree with your diagnosis. I don't think Chrono will see that much play, but I do think it's for a slightly different reason, actually. I think it's not necessarily because it's difficult. I think that Chronomancer actually is something pretty tricky to get value out of, right? Certainly to get a lot of value out of compared to other specs. But I think that the actual thing that really dictates the meta, and always has done to an extent, is how convenient something is to fit into your group and how versatile it is. I'm just gonna regurgitate all of my my good YouTube video talking points. You go watch all of them, by the way. But yeah, to me, the problem is that if let's say I get my heal mechanist, I'm having a good time. Me and Sneb, we love mech. We rub our mechs together sometimes, right? It's good. Okay. And I look at my ability bar, and I have literally every piece of utility in the entire game without changing a single skill. Now, if you're going to play Chronomancer, you're going to have to go, okay, right, I need to be a 9-head and like swap out this skill here and pick this skill here, right? Maybe I want to take focus here, this weapon here, another weapon over there, right? There's actually a lot more kind of intricacy to the way it works. I think this is actually what prevents it. It's like, well, you know, you could have like a specialist build that does a bunch of interesting things, like Chronomancer, or you can just take one build that does all of it, right? And, you know, I had a discussion about Elementalists, previously, and this really came up here. Like the problem with Elementalist and with Chronomancer, well, you could argue Continuum on this case. The problem with these classes is that they're well designed, right? And I'm being very flippant there, but it's true. If I play Elementalist, I have to choose. I can have Condition Cleanse with Fire, I can have Revival Power and extra boon output with Arcane, or I can have loads of protection, some stability with Earth. That's good design. I have to choose what I want. I have to specialize. If I play Mechanist or Firebrand, I don't have to choose. I get all of those things all the time, no matter what. And this is the real kicker. This happened in PvP, by the way, a lot. It's a very big problem in PvP and in World Versus as well to an extent. It turns out that having the ability to do that is insane. Even if the numbers aren't very high, even if it's not actually as strong as Chronomancer can be at peak effectiveness, for example, or any of the other kind of niche supports, more niche supports, it doesn't matter. Being that flexible all the time, no matter what, every single second, no matter what choices you make, that inherently is oppressive to the meta, right? This happened a lot, again, in PvP. Like, the builds that typically dominate in that game mode are the ones that do everything. The ones that can 1v1 and team fight and roam, right? And survive outnumbered, right? Those are the ones that do really well. And it's the same in PvE. The builds that are really good are the ones that do damage and support and a tanky and a range and have utility, right? Hello, Scourge. Hello, Firebrand. And I think that's actually the big oppressors in the meta right now, not even necessarily numbers. Because, you know, I fully agree with you two in the sense that it doesn't matter if Chrono has sick numbers. It doesn't. It's mechanically outclassed. That's its problem. And that's the problem of a lot of other builds as well. Mechanically, they are worse than other things. And ultimately, I view this as more of a design issue almost than a numbers issue. Like, numbers are important, don't get me wrong. No one wants to play a build that does like 3k DPS, right? I mean, well, I don't think so anyway. Maybe there are a few. Maybe there are a few who want to play that build. But the thing is, it's just a mechanical difference. And man, this is a tough one, and I feel really harsh for saying this, but I think ArenaNet have got to change design here. They need to actually look at design. Playing with numbers will not fix this. It will not fix the hole they've dug for themselves with Mechanist and Firebrand and so on, right? It's just not going to. It has to come down on a design level, in my opinion, with support builds.
I think it's also worth noting that it's like you said, Firebrand, Mechanist, Scourge, all of them, they're just good at everything, so you can take a lot of them. And then if you just have one Chrono, or I guess like, for example, in the case of Harvest Temple CM, if you just have a few Mesmers that can bring portals and everything, then they can kind of shoulder all of the responsibility for like those kinds of mechanics or those kinds of like super specialized, super niche gameplay. So then there's no reason for anyone else to play it. I feel like it's going to be very rare for there to be a situation where you think, okay, I really want to play only warrior here because it brings so much to the table for this specific fight. Like, definitely not in the same way you would say like we can just bring a bunch of Firebrands here and we'll be like totally okay. So
yeah. I think that's the issue, though. The fact that you can say that with such confidence is the issue, right? The fact that you can say, okay, what DPS are you playing? Fuck it, Scourge, right? That's an issue. It causes this problem because it's like, well, you know, you could specialize and do some really crazy tech, but you're probably not going to, right? And before we talk about Warrior a little bit, because I definitely do some really exciting banner reworks, I would have a quick Micro tangent. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. What do we think about this? So it is my theory that ArenaNet are significantly more likely to try and design creep all the specializations like Chronomancer, etc., 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 rather than actually nerf the design of the over-designed specs, such as Firebrand and Mechanist. Now, the reason and the justification that I see for this is because I think a big goal ArenaNet have, and a big pain point that they've identified in the game, is that making groups is kind of hard to make everything fit together. And I think that having really over-designed specializations makes making groups really easy. Like, really easy to do, right? Because they just do everything, right? You don't have to worry about, oh, wait, but we need this for this fight. Oh, we need for that for this fight. So that's my theory. What do you think about that? Is that balance hell? Because I do view that as balance hell, like pure hell, actually. And not well designed. But I do think it is actually quite likely. I think that is what ArenaNet, to an extent, want. And I even think it would be arguably good for the game, kind of, a little bit.
I don't know if it would be good or bad for the game, but maybe hot take. I think right now, Firebrand, Scourge, Mechanist are the classes that they wish every class was, where it's like, they're super versatile. You can bring them into any content. Like, didn't they literally say that in one of like the Balance manifestos, that they wanted to take out a lot of like the complexity it came to like actually like you can just like play one class and like kind of do everything, right?
Exactly.
We go by that definition. Those are really the only classes that are able to do that. Like, you could like maybe argue, I think like Thief in some situations, like you could give like quickness if you had like the plasma, whatever it's called, but like those are really the only classes where you could literally swap to any of the elite specializations and make a 10 group comp and you'll be like totally fine.
Boom.
So like, I think, again, I can't say whether that's like good or bad for the game. Like it's probably bad for like long-term growth, especially for the end game, like, you know, players, like the people who are really doing min-maxing, who really drive forward, like, you know, the edge of the boundaries of like the game and stuff. But for newer players, I think it does make it a lot easier for them to get into this kind of content, because they can know like the class that I'm playing right now, I can focus on the mechanics instead of worrying about my class. But the problem is that that's an idea in theory, but it's not actually working in practice, right? It's like we can kind of say that, like, you know, Quickness Warrior is not nearly as effective. And like, even if it gives quickness, very few people are going to like favor it the same way they favor like Firebrand. So yeah. But I do agree with you. I do think that you're trying to move the game in a direction where every class is like Firebrand, and every class is like Mechanist, and every class is like, in a way, actually kind of like Virtuoso now, because Power Virtuoso, Condi Virtuoso, both really solid damage classes. They have range, they have access to utility, they can bring portals, blinks, mobility, all that kind of stuff. And then they do technically have like the support like specs with like, you know, Alacrity Mirage or like Quickness Chronomancer, that sort of thing. The only thing is missing is a healing spec, but Mantra healing, anyone? But
yeah. It's kind of fun, kind of cool. I mean, it works, kind of.
Yeah,
I'm just like really reflecting on this because, you know, Teapot and I had that big discussion about apathy, which, by the way, that YouTube video has a ton of comments, and they're actually really insightful, really well thought out comments for the most part.
Are you surprised?
And well, I mean, sometimes they're not, but this time they were really, really good. And so I was just thinking about that, and So before the team time started, you're like, oh, there's balance. And I opened it up and I read it and I was kind of like, yeah. That was my first reaction, right? Okay. It's like, yeah, not going to change anything. That's what I thought. Oh, wow. And so I'm trying to step back and think, why did I think that? And I think the discussion that we just had here is exactly why. Nothing can beat these classes. It is totally irrelevant if you change the damage, and it doesn't matter. You have a few classes that can do everything. Unless you make every class do everything, it doesn't change anything. You're just always going to be outdone in some way, right? Or am I being too dramatic about that? I don't know, but it's kind of problematic. I mean, why care about the change if you know it doesn't change the meta, right?
You know, I like the my favorite part is the permanent stack of stability you get from the mech F2. That to me, like, it really
that's
just like, oh, that just underlines it. Like, there's one class in the game that gives a permanent stack of stability to the entire subgroup with 600 radius, right? Like,
and it's so good that it's actually bad in some places, because sometimes you don't want a permanent stack of stability, but otherwise it's really it's so powerful that when I'm making groups, I'm just like, who wants to play Mechanist? Because all the hands go up, right? It's like, yeah, you are like the MVP of your subgroup. You're providing all the boons. You're providing free. If somebody scuffs up their and they don't dodge something, it's like, oops, whatever. Nobody notices because I had Stab and Aegis just passively this whole time. It's so good. It's just so good that why not take it? I mean, of course, you can take other things and be just fine. Everything is perfectly viable, but if you're thinking I want to beat the boss, and you have like a AC 130 that you're gonna nuke something with, or you have like a water gun, like what are you gonna pick? Like, I don't know. It's
good. It's a good
strong
ability. Crisis Zone actually might be the best. It might be one of the best skills in the game, actually. Like, it is so... it's funny because I actually blame myself. I take responsibility because mech before EOD was absolute garbage. And I said it was absolute garbage. And ArenaNet, they were like, oh shit, mech is absolute garbage. Let's make it the most ridiculous class in the entire game. And they did. Yeah. It was really funny. Another tangent here. This actually really bothered me. Sneb, I said post-patch, mech is an RP spec and it sucks. And a lot of people actually got really mad at me. They're like, no, mech is really good. It's really good. Yeah. Right, it was trash, obviously. But I'm like, I'm trying to help you, right? Like, you love Mechanist. I like that. That's cool. You love mech. I'm just saying it's trash and they should buff it. And they were just big mad at me for saying that it's not good. They were like emotionally invested. They were mentally destroyed. Like, they couldn't handle it, actually. Someone actually like blocked me for saying that mech wasn't good. It was crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of going back to the other one though, I feel like permanent buffs of any sort just feels very unbalanced, because I feel it takes away a lot of the, I guess, like deliberateness of like using certain skills at certain times. Like, imagine if you could just like play Sanctuary and then it's just like there for like the rest of the game until like its CC has like been used up or something. I feel like I don't like that very much. It kind of goes back to I wasn't playing at the time, but I've had a lot of people tell me this. But back in the day, buffs were not permanent. Like, if you got buffs, you were supposed to like kind of like time them with like specific bosses, and it was actually pretty hard to upkeep like 100% uptime on every single buff in the game and all that kind of stuff. So there was actually, I guess, a bit of like, player choice involved with that. And I feel like Mechanist having the only way to give permanent stability, even if it's just one stack by pressing one button and just kind of like set it and forget it, just feels very unfun to me. I didn't think about it until you kind of brought it up just now, but it's like, then I think kind of like even Firebrand, like pressing stand your ground at certain times, like there was a little bit of complexity with that, right? It's like you wanted to save it for specific attacks. Like you wanted to save it after you CC'd Slothazar. You wanted to save it when, I don't know, in Fractals or something, like, when the boss is doing like a pizza attack or so, there was at least some sort of player choice involved. And then, I don't know. I hope they don't make it so that all of the classes are like that. I personally think that would be very boring. Like if like, I don't know.
This is a very scary trend that I think we've been seeing, is a big move to passive gameplay and non-reactive gameplay. So if you're playing a support, you mash all of your utility skills on cooldown. That's your gameplay to give boons, right? And mech is a lot like that, to be honest, right? There's no reactive element. You just spam, nothing else. That does concern me. You know what? I'm going to sound like a bit of a doomer here. I'm not even sure if it's worth talking about that, because I think it's inevitable. I think that's actually a desired outcome from ArenaNet, which kind of sucks because I think it kind of crushes the skill ceiling to an extent. But ArenaNet really want to lower the skill floor, and they probably care about the skill floor a lot more than they care about the skill ceiling, right? And how active the game is, which is, it's unfortunate stuff, but we just, we have We have to embrace it.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's not get overly depressed. You know, this is not depressed time, right? It's tea time. Full energy time.
Ultimately, I think it's really positive that they're reacting and making changes. And I like the accountability they took with Warrior there. I said, yes, we very badly missed the mark. And then they proceed to fix, right? I'm not a Warrior main or anything, but I look at the Warrior changes and I go, yeah, it's pretty good, right? The banners all have a different purpose. That's pretty good. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah,
good.
And I definitely really want to echo that for sure with the accountability. I was really hoping they would write something like this. I was terrified they were going to say, yeah, the banner changes actually they were okay, but no, they have said that they were very bad because indeed they were very bad. You know, like some would go for some people even in the chat, Sneb, would go further than that. You know, they would say things a lot stronger language than just saying they were bad. But you know what? That's illegal, so we're not doing that here, of course. And now they have fully reworked the banners. Okay. And you know what? They're actually pretty cool. Like, these are actually pretty interesting. So the core idea here is that banners have a much shorter cooldown now, 30 seconds, and they still have a pulsing boon component, but they only last for 15 seconds, so they're, you know, relatively short duration, and they have like a big active impact effect. I think this actually targets some really important things about banners. Actually, they were just so passive, right? You're like, but I've got 2 dead utility skills, right? Yeah, I've got my utility skill. It does nothing and just gives everyone boons and stats for 60 seconds. It's not a very engaging, active skill to use. So I definitely like the approach they've taken here. And they've given it some nifty utility as well, right? You know, Banner of Defense, Barrier and Aegis, Tactics, Stability, and Super Speed. That sounds fun for World versus World, you know? Discipline has Bleeding and Cripple as well. Banner of Strength is it dazes too, so an extra C, like AoE CC. I mean, that sounds pretty interesting too, right? And Battle Stand does a shit ton of damage now, apparently. 4.0 power scaling. Wow. Wow. And the boons are a bit better too. You've got Fury, Regen, Resistance, and Might. And then Battle Stand is Fury, Swiftness, Might, 2 stacks as well. Yeah. You know, I see it. These are actually a lot more interesting. I can see some actual really big potential there, to be honest, with these builds. They slightly modified the quickness is no longer on the drop as well. It's just on doubled standards now, I believe, actually. Yeah. And it also only applies to the pulsing bins. Unlucky. That's unfortunate right there. But yeah, I can actually see this being pretty interesting as a build. You know, some kind of like it's not going to be the heal build. Heal Warrior. If you're a Heal Warrior fan, got some bad news for you. That ain't happening. Not this patch anyway, but I could certainly see this having some pretty interesting applicability. I could see this being played. You know what's actually really weird is that these abilities are quite good, actually. I could almost see this being played in other game modes. Support Warrior is kind of a thing in PvP. You run a lot of shouts there, though, so you probably can't really fit it in over the shout heal for sure. But in World versus World, Stability and Super Speed, how bad can it be, right? You know, you already have these kind of supportish warrior builds anyway. So I can definitely see some applicability there as well. But overall, I think some very significant improvements to banners, right? Like long awaited, right? Like it's been a long time in that regard. Will it be Firebrand? Probably not. Because again, like the issue I see with this is an issue that actually affects a lot of classes. And again, it relates to design. So the key concept here is profession mechanic. And when I say profession mechanic, I mean like F1, F2, F3. Some classes have very good profession mechanics, others do not. I actually feel that Warrior is one of the ones that doesn't really have a particularly strong profession gimmick. And as a result of that, it's very heavily reliant on its utility skills. And this means that if you want to do this, you're going to have to give up every single one of your utility slots to take banners. And that is actually a very big trade-off. It means you can't take any CC, you can't take any mobility, can't take any more damage, can't take any survivability. You only get to take banners. And again, we're in this really weird spot, right? Where, okay, you could argue that's well designed, right? There's a trade-off. But what about all the classes that aren't well designed and have no trade-off? And I really hate to be a bit of a doomer and a little bit critical of this stuff, because I do think these changes are good from a design perspective. I just don't really see them actually changing anything in the meta a crazy amount, because again, you know, you're battling against some pretty busted design in this regard, some pretty fucking wild design in this regard.
I think this is mostly true for Berserker, like Banner Warrior, right? Because I feel like the profession mechanic for Bladesworn is pretty neat. I haven't played it that much myself, but I've seen people pulling some like insane DPS numbers on it, and they actually say it's like pretty cool because they get to role play as like an anime, like, you know, samurai or whatever it's called. So I feel like that one is like probably okay. Saw someone bring it up in the chat, and I do think that this is a really good point, is that in a way we've kind of defined Banner Warrior or Berserker, whatever you want to call it, only around its banners. Like, we don't really think about the class in terms of like anything else, right? Like, other than F1 mash, right? You just keep on slamming your skills and you slam F1, and then that's kind of like the extent of the complexity of that class. So it could have been very interesting if they added other things to Warrior beyond just the banners. Like, what if there were other utility skills that gave stability or something, right? Then you would have to, like, it's like you said, you have to choose a trade-off. Do you want to take banners for quickness, or do you sacrifice a little bit of quickness uptime, bring more boon duration so you can bring extra stability here? Or I don't know, some maybe like some sort of like stun break, or maybe even more CC, like beyond just like headbutt or stuff like that. You know, I feel like right now, Warrior, when we think of Banner Warrior, we only think of banners. We don't think about anything else. Everything else is like borderline, like, I don't know. You just don't think about it.
Are you just suggesting that they buff the other things like shouts?
I mean, I guess just adding use for them, right? I feel like all of the previous balance patches around Warrior, with the exception of Bladesworn, again, is only around the banners. What about the other? There's like 5 different things. There are 5 different types of skills and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So that's 25 different skills, and they're only focusing on like maybe 4 of them. Do we just like pretend that those don't exist and that people won't take them, like especially as like a newer player?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it's kind of. I mean, so on one hand, for a new player, it doesn't really matter, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter that much, because in open world, you can pretty much get away with playing anything, and you're going to have a good time. You're going to do just fine. Now, the moment where you try to elevate and go into group content, maybe get a little bit better at your class, a little bit greater understanding, then you're going to realize just how inefficient running shouts are, right? Or if you're an engineer player, you're going to realize that turret NG probably not the play, you know?
AFK
and
problem.
I actually think that every class has that, right? Every class has these certain skills that just aren't used, or only used in this like one off thing, like rifle turret, for example, is used because it adds just a little bit more DPS in some situations. But otherwise, nobody touches those things.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of true. I guess the 2 classes that I play the most are Mesmer and Guardian, and I feel like with those, you do swap things around pretty often. Like on Mesmer, you can take Portal, you can take Blink, you can take Feedback. There's like different variants, right? Like you can do STM Chrono, or you can do, or I guess you used to be able to do like the Well Chrono, right? With Mimic, the Quickness Well, and like SOI and that sort of thing. You could choose between either Time Warp or MOA for more CC. Like there was like a lot of choice involved, at least with Mesmer. But I'm biased because I play pretty much only Mesmer. But Guardian, I would argue there's like kind of similar, right? Like you can take Wall of Reflection, you can take Hallowed Ground, you can take Stand Your Ground, you can take Sanctuary for CC, even Hammer of Wisdom for CC. And like, for example, in some of the Fractal fights, the CC bar is just, it blows up too quickly, right? To get full value out of like Stand Your Ground, or sorry, not Stand Your Ground, Sanctuary. So it's like, it would be, I don't know. I feel like with Warrior in particular, I feel like it's kind of the worst case, because I literally cannot think of another Warrior skill that I've ever heard anyone mention ever, other than the shout skills. And
is it okay that some of those skills are only used in PvP or world versus world?
I don't know. I feel like that's interesting, because I do know Mesmer also has some utility skills that are pretty much only used in world versus world, like the invisible line one, whatever it's called, where you like run across it and stuff. But it's different, right? It's like, it's different between having 1 or 2 skills that are used only in like specific game modes, and having every skill except for the 4 that are relevant being pretty much useless. I feel like that's kind of like, I don't know. I guess just to me, that kind of, I feel it would be a lot more interesting for the class, and it would give it more of an identity than just like the banner warrior.
I think the issue I think the issue you run into though is the way that certain key boon applications, when I say kind of like key boon, I mean quickness or alacrity, the way those are applied ends up being pretty problematic. Because I mean, I think their intention here is actually might be to address this, because you'll notice that Banner of Tactics gives quickness in PvE only now. So I think their goal is maybe that just that banner and the tactics trait line is perma quickness. So that would give you some flexibility in what utility skill you use. But I think the real thing that needs to be guaranteed is that you actually have the ability to choose. For example, on a lot of builds, you kind of don't have an option. Right, because if you change one of your skills, you're not going to give your key boon anymore. I think that, you know, look at Spectre, for example. If you're going to play Alacrity Spectre, you have to run a zillion wells. If you don't, well, then you don't do your job. You actually can't do your job, because your job is entirely bound to your utility skills, right? And that is actually a huge disadvantage compared to, I hate to bring it up again, but Mechanist uses 0 of its utility skills to apply its key boon, Alacrity, right? It's all baked into traits and passives, right? So all of your active skills are totally free. That is a colossal advantage, an insane advantage, actually, over other professions. Same thing with Firebrand, right? It's mostly just you use your mantra and your elite skill, then everything else is more or less free, right? And well, your heal skill is kind of free, but it's an insane heal skill, so you're always going to take the one that gives you even more quickness anyway, right? And
I think they want them to be pretty free, though. I guess that was sort of
they either have to be, or they either have to be, or all of them have to be, or none of them can be. Yeah, right? That's the
weird middle ground. Right? That's the issue. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you can't have it both ways, because if you do have it both ways, then the ones that have the advantage will always oppress the ones that don't. It's weird to talk about this, because it's just, that's how the game works, right? You kind of hit this bedrock when you're discussing issues like that. And it's just going to be, yeah, the ones that have strong design will always oppress the ones that have weak design. That's just video games 101, right?
Well, there's also a bit of a problem because, well, okay, so here's a good example. Stacks Mirage, you know, the staff axe, it doesn't give 100% alacrity uptime. But if you mix a bunch of them, it's good. It's really good, because high DPS, etc. on certain bosses and whatever. But that build is not used in the general public. Like, very few people are going to use that in the LFG. People don't generally do those, I don't even know what to call them, like a hybrid. It's almost like a half boon, but more 75% DPS, 25%
Another example
boon.
was Condi Chrono back in the day. All of the Condi Chronos would just take an alacrity well, and then you could keep up 100% alacrity uptime if you had like 4 of them in a subset.
I actually think builds like that are fine. Because that build exists because Staff Mirage exists, right? And that's I would say Staff Mirage is actually a pretty underrated, very pug-friendly build, weirdly enough.
Yeah.
It's very good.
But where I'm going with this is that you could theoretically do that with a lot of things. The problem is that we don't, because it would take so much effort to gear all of those things properly. And so I think that as a community, we sort of glom onto these very specific roles and say you're doing 100% of this, no questions asked, because that's just the easiest thing to do, to say you have the role and then move on, rather than say you 3 are each doing 33% of the quickness here. It's just not as effective. And so I'm kind of thinking, do they make everything so that literally every class can do 100% of a certain boon or whatever? Or do they make it so that hybridizing things are more effective or easily accessible?
I think the kind of ideal world would be, right? Like if every class could do everything, that's technically lowering the skill floor for better accessibility, but then those hybrid builds still exist so that there's a higher skill ceiling. I think that would be the ideal scenario, but I feel like that's a lot easier said than done, because realistically, it's really hard to do that, right? I feel like Stacks Mirage or a Staff Mirage, whichever version you play, it's very niche. Like, not only is it niche in the sense that Mesmer is already kind of an underutilized class for the reason that you said before, it's pretty complex to play, but it's also really only super effective in specific bosses and like super specific scenarios that realistically, if we're thinking of a new player, probably constitutes less than like 0.5% of their total playtime, right? So it's like, I don't know. I feel like it's really hard to make those hybrid builds effective for the general public, and that they'll always be superior in like organized
They
groups.
never will be. Ever.
Yeah.
Because one, they're going to be way harder to play. Two, it's a million times harder to build your group around that. And ultimately, people, the builds that gamers play, it's always going to be dictated by how convenient is it for me to actually get to actually build my group around this. And asking for like, well, because now everything's back in the day when everything was 10 target. Honestly, yeah, asking for 2 Righteous Rebel Renegades is actually not unreasonable, right? Okay, I get that. Easy peasy. Doesn't really make making a group a lot harder because it's basically the same as a DPS renegade, but you change a trait. But now you'd have to ask for like 4, right? And that's not happening. It's the same reason why you're not going to see the catalyst stacking or power chrono stacking. It's not. Look, do you gamers remember when power chrono was like 45k DPS benchmark?
I remember.
Right?
I remember.
But here's the thing. This is what a lot of people don't remember and fail to grasp about the meta. Why didn't every pug group run that?
Because it was really hard to play.
Good
you
question.
have to actually time your time warps, because if you use them all at the same time, you overcapped on quickness.
Yeah, but I don't think that's the reason, actually. Because I think people tend to, even if they don't fully understand the strategy, they'll copy what they think is best anyway. I don't actually think the difficulty is what puts people off. I think what puts people off is the fact that you needed like 6 power chronos to make that work, right? That's the issue.
It's too complicated.
It's too complicated to build your group, and how to actually approach it as a group. It requires too much coordination. The actual mechanical difficulty, I don't think is actually the end of the world. People will play stuff that is mechanically difficult and not play it very well. You know, in pug groups, do you always have quickness? No. Do you always have healing? No. Do you always have people who do mechanics or revive? No. Right? I don't think that people don't play things because they're not very good at them. I think that happens all the time. I think what puts people off is the fact that if you have to put some effort into organizing your group, it's in general not going to be worth it, right? You want to wait like an extra 10 minutes to get your 6 power chronos? I'm not so sure about that. I think that's a low value trade. So I think hybrids will always be this thing that sees play at high level, and like the more dedicated roles that can fit into a, kind of the jigsaw puzzle, the mosaic of group composition, those will always end up being a lot better, which kind of goes back to the original point, right? Like the more flexible your build, the bigger the piece you are, the more common you're going to be. And also the better you can connect with all the other pieces. And obviously the more versatile you are, the better you can connect with other pieces instead of being this weird specialized build.
Yeah. So if this is the case though, it is such a design problem because now in order for something to see play, it has to be as good as the alternative.
Yes.
Pretty much.
Or better.
The significant.
In fact, better. Here, and you know what? Let me go further. Sneb, I love you. I'm so glad you brought this up. Sneb is God, right? Sneb is God. Right. Anyway, I'm very glad you said that, because it's actually not good enough for it to be equal. It has to be better. Right? It almost has to be strictly better. When I say strictly, I mean better in all situations, all the time, always. Why? Well, it's because there's actually a pretty big opportunity cost to changing your build in Guild Wars 2 for a lot of the player base anyway. Because if you say, okay, change to this build, you have to say, right, get a completely new gear set and completely learn a new build. Bear in mind, a lot of players actually struggle to play one build and gear one build because that's expensive for a large amount of the player base. So for something to actually be worth it changing and to actually grind the meta, particularly in fractals, because you've got to gear agony resistance as well and infuse your gear, right? Because of that, it's even more of this initial opportunity cost. It has to be better. It can't actually be equal. It needs to be better. Which is a bit sad, but it is what it is.
Yeah. But at least if they're equal, somebody will play it. But you're right. People are going to always gravitate to anything that has an advantage, which is why in my group the other night, there were like 5 virtuosos. Last night I did wing 1 to 4 full clear, 5 CMs. We had 5 virtuosos for a majority of the run.
Oh, I like that.
It was pretty good.
Yeah.
There were portals everywhere. There were portals on top of portals. I didn't know where it would take me. I just hit F.
Nice.
Yeah.
There were 2 or 3 mechs, 4 verts.
Good.
2 firebrands, and we threw a scourge in there or a soul beast, depending on what we were playing.
That's good. Good choice. Before we move on, I just want to drop one final thing about the meta. Okay. I see a lot of people complaining that all the Harvest Temple CM groups run exactly the same comp or basically the same comp. Here's a news flash for everyone here who is interested in the metagame. Anything at high level will always end up looking vaguely the same. It's inevitable because there is a best in slot. There always will be. There has to be a best in slot. And because of that, the higher level play you go, the more every comp looks the same, no matter how balanced the metagame is. Because if you're dealing with a 10% advantage or a 1% advantage, if you're playing at high level, you'll always take the 1% advantage. You'll never play with something that's even 0.1% worse, because why would you do that, right? So just that's the final note there as well. Every comp, no matter how balanced the game is, will always be optimized and basically the same at high level. There you go. That's it. Anyway, moving on away from the weekly 10-year balance discussion. You know, I love that. You know what else happened? Fractal instabilities.
They did. They happened.
Yeah. They have been reworked. Fractals have been reworked.
I have some initial thoughts on that.
Really? What are your
May I offer my thoughts first? Yeah. Because I am not really a Fractal player. So okay. I think it'll be... I'm actually very curious. I didn't see like a lot of uprising about this. So am I just totally out of the loop? Or like, because when you mentioned the fractal changes, I completely forgot that there were any fractal changes because I didn't see anyone talking about them. Are people actually like big mad about this? Are they really happy? What's the general consensus? Because I've heard just crickets, you know, like cricket emoji.
Do you want the flippant answer? Do you want the flippant answer to that question, Sneb?
Sure.
Basically, I think that the hardcore scene has been so alienated by ArenaNet that there's not really that many people left over who are invested enough in fractals to really make a noise about it. That might sound very cynical, but it's kind of true, to be honest. I think that,
No one cares? Oh, that's harsh.
Maybe a bit more of a PMA take. I think there's people that still care. Like if we're talking about the like top, like not even 1%, but the top like 5 players in Fractals that were really, really like pushing the meta and stuff, then yes, I would argue, you know, they're pretty apathetic towards the game mode at this point. But I think for most people that are clearing them daily, just because it's an excellent source of gold, it's honestly pretty fun to do. It actually gives you kind of like a sense of direction when you're like trying to increase your fractal level, that sort of thing. I think most people are pretty happy about them. But because they're casual players or not casual, they're like, you know, casual in the sense that they're not content creators, they're not really doing anything with like websites, that sort of thing. They kind of get shuffled to the side, sort of like the silent majority sort of thing, right? And I think that's a big reason why it feels like there's crickets, is because there's no content creator talking about it. There's no big website making news articles about it. There's no like, you know, nobody making websites and stuff or like posting announcements and stuff. And that's why I think I actually disagree with that, which is basically what I'm trying to get to. Is I think most people are pretty happy about them. Most people saw the instability changes and thought, oh, that was pretty neat. We don't have to deal with Last Laugh and We Bleed Fire and No Pain, No Gain all at the same time anymore, freaking wrecking us on an otherwise easy fractal. So, yeah.
So in short, they actually do really like it, just no one is voicing it.
Yeah, I think. Or maybe not like really liking it, like, oh my gosh, this is the best change to have come to fractals in the past 10 years or anything like that. But I think most people see them and they think, that was pretty good. It makes my daily experience better.
Yes.
That begs the question though, was it not good enough of a change to incite a lot of positivity and like excitement around it? And again, maybe I'm the odd one out here. I just didn't notice anything because I don't play fractals enough. So I'm on the Reddit every day. I just heard nothing.
I don't know. I feel like it's like, does every change need to be so big that we like sing from the balconies about it? I feel like if the game is moving in a direction that makes it more fun, isn't that already kind of a celebration in and of itself?
I sung from the balconies because I actually do think these changes are really good. Yeah, you know, again, I was being very cynical that there's no one left to be mad, and that's kind of true. Wait, Zorak debate when? So yeah, I mean, I like that actually.
No debate.
But anyway, anyway, I think the changes are really good. I think not all of them have worked out quite well. I know that Flux Bomb is kind of weird, to be honest, right? It's a bit scuffed and can be a little bit hard to see. And they made it really tiny and happen really often, which does kind of actually make me laugh. I hate to say it. But in general, I think the changes from a design perspective are excellent. They've moved them to be a lot more interactive. So instead of going like, oh, I've got to deal with this shitty mechanic, it's going like, ooh, I actually might want to play around that. You know, I might want to interact with this in some way. I think it's really good. I think the actual idea behind it is excellent. I hope they do go back and polish it a little bit. I think they actually mentioned in the post that they are going to kind of keep an eye on things and make further adjustments if necessary. But yeah, overall, I think the changes are very good. I was surprised that people actually weren't singing their praises a bit more. Actually, there was a bit of like, oh yeah, in the Reddit thread, like, oh, he's pretty good, guys. Oh, it's fun. I was feeling a lot more though. Like, I think it's because in general, improving the design, it's not going to get you as much of a fanfare as adding a new Fractal. If they'd done this at the same time, it's like, whoa, crazy new content. Oh my God. Like, what? And they changed it to, that's crazy. And because they've been basically fixing core mechanics, they're perhaps not getting the same level of people going crazy as they otherwise would, I think.
I think this is pretty universal across most things. Most people are more excited about new features than they are about maintenance. So I think that's happens a lot. Yeah. I think
so. I want to try to understand how impactful the changes are as somebody who has dabbled in fractals but doesn't do them daily, or even I haven't done a fractal in weeks, maybe even months. I don't know.
I think,
but if I were to go in now, how big of a change would I notice?
It depends on how experienced you are, because I'll kind of speak from my own personal experience. I feel like nothing has really changed, but that's because I pretty much play with the same group of people who I know and I trust, and we all handle the mechanics just because we're really used to doing them every single day with really high DPS, so we skip a lot of the phases and stuff. So for us, almost no change whatsoever. But if you're a new player or a new-ish person to Fractals and you just hit T3 Elo Hell, it's going to feel a lot better. I've heard a lot of like people that were doing like ad infinitum achievements and that sort of thing. They were like, yeah, I feel like it's been a lot easier to like get my dailies and stuff so I can get my journal pages. I feel like just in general, we don't like groups don't wipe as much. People aren't like dying to random things. People actually like know kind of like what to do with like these instabilities now because there's just like more coverage on it, like that sort of thing. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. You know, I don't know. I think you're right in saying that it's going to be a slightly subtle difference, particularly if you've got them on farm. You're just going to blitz them kind of no matter what. But I think I think you start to appreciate it after a while. I think they'll be a lot less annoying in general, particularly after they've polished out some of them, right? You know, maybe Flux Bomb happens a little bit too often right now. Maybe it's a little too small, right? But I think that people almost have got used to being like, oh, it's that combo today. Like, holy shit. Oh, great. It's this instability today. Wow, so much fun. And I think that as they keep moving along with this design, I think you're going to stop having that experience. And that's a little bit different than like, oh, wow, this is so much better. Right? What it is, it's like making it, this isn't bad anymore. Rather than saying like, oh, this is incredible and it's new and it changes my gameplay entirely. I feel like it's removing an annoyance, which is perhaps a little bit harder to perceive, particularly if you've been farming the content for a very long time. But I think it's a subtly impactful change, actually. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm insane.
I don't think it's crazy. I think it's laying the groundwork for more stuff to be able to add it into that game mode. Maybe copium, maybe hopium, but there are less than 25 fractals, even though there's 25 tiers or 25 fractals for each tier. it would be really cool to see if ArenaNet rounds out that number. Because right now, certain tiers have multiple of certain fractals, right? Like I think Volcanic shows up twice in tier 1. Imagine if every tier had exactly 25 fractals, and then they could officially call the game mode complete. But it would be cool if they did that, right? It would.
Yeah. It would be pretty cool. I like it. Anyway, like I guess I probably should have summarized the changes a little bit as well. We're doing this but in reverse. Just for those who are kind of unaware of what happened with fractals, they've essentially made the instabilities a lot more interactive. Like, for example, you can block the toxic trails and you'll make them go away, right? You can, when you get the outflanked instability, you can flank enemies now, right? All that kind of stuff. When it's no pain, no gain, you like steal the boons away, all that kind of stuff. It's a lot more interactive than it used to be. Like that is the type of design that you end up having there, right? It's pretty cool stuff. So you have to kind of think about it and try and actually play around the instabilities more. My favorite one, like I think people might hate this one, but I actually love this. My favorite one is the toxic spit, right? Or whatever it's called, right? The one where you spit on people. Because now you can spit on the boss. I think this is how it works, actually. I don't know if this has happened yet, but you can spit on the boss and it will do less damage. And if you spit on your allies, you do less damage, right? I think that's actually really good. That's a really interesting piece of design, in my opinion. Because now you really get rewarded for actually doing it well. Because previously you just kind of ignore it, right? You're just like, fuck it. No one cares, right? Just muscle through it. But now you can go crazy, right? You can go absolutely insane. It's good shit. I love to see it. It's good. Yeah, there you go. That was a short topic, wasn't it? It's a good thing we talked about the balance. Otherwise, this tea time it's already over. But I liked it.
We haven't talked about the new bosses.
I like,
the new core bosses.
I'm just gonna say this because I want to give the core redesign team some respect, right? I like the Fractal Changes core redesign team. I'm here. I'm fighting for you. It was good. Do you want to talk about world bosses? And I kind of want to talk about world bosses. Sneb, what do you think about vanilla world bosses?
Well, I'm actually really happy with the changes they made because it was something I think I and a lot of other people have been advocating for a long time. Incorporate some other mechanics into the beginning parts of the game or the open world so that when people get to the end game, it's not as big of a jump because it's a huge jump otherwise. Suddenly having to stand in circles and having them be really consequential and people just would get really wrecked for a while, and that made it really unfun. But now that you can go to these beginner world bosses, you can walk up to them and suddenly it's telling you, get out of the circle, get in the circle, do this. It's sort of holding your hand along what I would consider to be the tutorial part of Guild Wars 2. And really guiding you in a direction that's quite positive so that when you get to the more difficult stuff, you're good to go. So
I really like
I think it's positive.
I really like the telegraphs that they've been doing, like the text that pops up at like the top of the screen and it has like the red sort of like paint streak and stuff. I feel like that like immediately pulls your eyes to it, right? So then like newer players, they're going to see that and they're going to think, oh, okay, so this is a thing that I have to engage with. Whereas I think I'm thinking about like the old, what's it, the one in Queensdale, Shadow Behemoth? Old Shadow Behemoth, it would just yell at you sometimes, and then these things would kind of start popping up around. But for a new player, they don't know like what those things are, like maybe that's like another event that's happening. I don't care about it, right? But now it actually pops up and it says you have to kill the portals in order to like get to the next phase of the boss, which I think in terms of visual clarity, that's a lot better. It also adds a lot of consistency, right? It's like if they do this for all of the core bosses and everything, then from now on players can expect, okay, when I read this red text, it is relevant to the fight at hand, right? And then the other telegraphs as well with like the red arrow, meaning that the boss is going to dash in a certain way or something like that. We see that in strike missions, right? It's like we see that like, when Franier jumps over to the side or something like that, that means that he's going to move, or when Minister Lead dashes across the side, we know that the boss is going to move. So they're introducing like these telegraphs super, super early. I also really like the Defiance bar change in like the Jungle Worm. I feel like that one I was very surprised that they went with, because I feel like it's not an insignificant CC bar. It's a pretty big one. So it's not like, just two people can just carry the CC with like waste stations or like, what are they, the consumables and stuff. Like you actually need people to engage with the Defiance bar. And that is a really low level area, right? Like that's like a level 10, 15 area or something like that. So it is getting the eyes of a lot of people that have probably never really engaged with the Defiance bar before.
Yeah. I think that's, you've summed it up perfectly. And of course, what I love is that there's a different thing that's very common throughout Guild Wars 2 on each of them, right? You've got the Shockwave, you've got the Defiance bar, you've got the kind of invulnerability phase and go and do something else, right? Across the board. It's great. My favorite is definitely the worm. I love the great juggle of it. It's so cool now, like with the husks that come in and heal the worm. They don't heal it that much, and that's my only disappointment, because I actually went to a regular run and it failed, right? The event didn't fail, but a husk got in, but it barely healed the worm. I was hoping it would be quite punishing, actually. So there's a, oh shit, we really don't want to let these husks in, but I'll give them that. It's a level 10 area, fair enough. I'll okay. It doesn't have to be super hard.
Imagine,
yeah.
Imagine it explodes like a Hydra into like a million worms.
Ooh, yes. Yeah, it spawns
I would have
mass worms.
To heal more, right? It's like maybe heal the boss for like 50% of its HP.
I like that. Yeah.
But I think that would have been really cool, because it brings a little bit of a threat of failing the boss before the timer runs out. Right? It's like if you constantly let the worms in, unless you have Omega DPS, you're not going to be able to burst it down fast enough before the next like husk gets in. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's good. I love that design. I love that they're using the tech that also gives you a text box notification when you fucked up as well, right? If you get hit by the shockwave on the fire elemental, it tells you, and it tells you how to avoid it, right? I think that's really cool. Overall, I'm very impressed by the design work that they've done here. And, I'm super interested to see how much of this they can do a year, because they've actually said that, again, this is like a team doing this, right? There's a team that is actually working on these changes, like some updates to core systems and improving things. I would love to see them do this for like every world boss in the entire game, right? The core world bosses. And there's a lot of them, right? So it might take them a while, but I would love to see that. I think it's super cool. I think updating some of the world bosses, which are very bread and butter Guild Wars 2 content, and making the vanilla game like kind of up to par with the more modern game, I think is really good. And I think it's an excellent way to introduce players, as you mentioned, Emi, to these really key telegraphs, right? That are going to be so useful and so important as you progress to the more challenging content and even through the story as well. So yeah, big fan, really big fan of these changes. Actually, it might even be my favorite thing in the patch, because I love world bosses, right? I love that shit. Let's go. We're adding Su-1 unnerfed to Corteria. Next world boss rework, massive buffs. Su-1 level. In fact, we're buffing Triple Trouble to be harder than Su-1.
In a way, I think it's already harder than Su-1. I'm gonna be completely honest. I feel like Su-1, no, that's
because of the
not
hard
a dig
fail
at,
state, right?
Yeah. I feel like, no, that's not to say like, Su-1 is like super easy and stuff, because you do still need a decent amount of coordination to do it, but it's killable. I feel like with Triple Trouble, you need a guild to be organizing it, or you're never going to get that kill. Whether it's just because maybe it's just not as popular, or maybe I think a big part of it is you have to split in the map. And I feel like the splits are a lot less intuitive compared to like Dragon's End, for example, right? Where you have very clearly 3 lanes that you have to go down, big circles that tell you like where you're supposed to go. So I don't know. I find Triple Trouble to be harder to clear than Su-1.
I think it's because Triple Trouble has mechanics, whereas Su-1 has attacks.
Yeah,
right?
That's true.
Good point. Yeah.
So that's the big thing. And you know what? I actually would like to see open world bosses that have mechanics. But I can understand why you wouldn't want to do that, because the trouble is with mechanics is that they're pass fail, right? That's what I'm talking about when I say a mechanic versus an attack. An attack is like a boss swings at you and you have to not be in the red or you're big dead, right? That's an attack. A mechanic is you need to do something to pass this, right? You need to stand in that green circle. You need to all get eaten by the worm and do this kind of puzzle mechanic, right? It's a puzzle. Like, that's what a mechanic is. It's something you have to solve. You have to figure out how it works, right? And that's what Triple Trouble has. To an extent, that's what Marionette has as well. That's why Marionette fails a lot, because if you don't understand, I've seen this now. I've seen this. I'm sure you enjoy this. I've seen people die to level 1 Wasp, right? The Wasp, they don't realize that they can't attack it from the front. They keep attacking it from the front and they die to the Wasp. The Wasp wins. It achieves victory over them. And you hate to see that. That does happen though. Whereas, you know, with a lot of open world bosses, they typically just hit you really hard and kill you, and you just have to kill them. So that's kind of the distinction there. Bees, yes. Be yourself.
I think. Oh, you go ahead.
Go ahead.
I feel like I've been talking.
Interrupt. This is now interrupt time. Sneb,
can I just address that elephant in the room quickly? Wait. There is latency on Discord, and Emi and I are talking at the same time sometimes, but I don't hear her until like a second after I'm talking, and then I feel really bad.
No.
Okay.
I wasn't really following along with that because that was happening while I was talking. But no, it's okay. You go first. I feel like I've been talking a lot.
I don't even remember what we were talking about now.
Just real quick, I kind of want to hit, you know, I just kind of want to hit a little bit on this as well. This is something that I get a lot on TeaTime. Me and Sneb have talked about this a little bit. I just want to clarify this before we move on to another topic. We'll continue our discussion here, right? Gamers, I'm going to tell you a little secret. We're all friends on TeaTime. We like each other. So we're not...
That's what you think.
Whoa! And Emi said she doesn't like drama. Like, wow. Unfucking real. She's like, oh, I hate drama. I don't like drama. And just starts it right now. Okay? But to be clear, everyone, okay, everyone chat, we're not like maliciously going to interrupt each other. That's not how it works. Seriously, like, this is so funny. Like, I've had a few chats with Sneb on stream, and people in the comments think we fucking hate each other or something. It's not a joke. It's like people actually believe this, and I just want to reassure everyone this is not the case. Yeah. There you go. Forgot. Yeah, now we've derailed. Now we've completely derailed our memes.
Oh, okay. I remember what I was going to say. I wish that they made Triple Trouble into an instance thing. The same way you see Dragonstorm and Marionette or like that sort of thing, and then put it on a timer, like on the same timer, right? Because it is still on a timer right now. It's just in open world. That would be really cool. I would do that.
I'd like that.
Yeah.
I wonder how much play that would see. I mean, you can guild spawn it. Isn't that pretty similar?
Oh, I haven't done guild missions or anything like that in a while.
Does anybody? I don't know. I did a guild mission for the first time in months yesterday because I'm leveling like a personal guild for the bank or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, wow, I haven't done any of this forever.
I think an expansion of the guild spawn system would be really good. Right, like in general, I think that's a really good thing because the thing is, okay, but you could do private instances. Well, the problem with that is then everyone who's a bit sweatier is just never going to play open world, right? Like, that's just never going to happen. You're only going to do instances, right? It's like what people do with Dragonstorm. They'll just do 10-man instances over and over again instead of playing with other people. So I think it's important to kind of keep it a little bit more open with the open world because it is that is the main game as such. So if you could just like spawn it whenever you want, that would be pretty cool. Or at least have an ability to create another map. This is like an idea that I think would be a good compromise. I think I spoke with Sneb about this ages ago. If you could make your own map within reason, right, that would be pretty cool, I think. With a queue. And you can queue into it.
We've been talking about a lot of like the core system. So I don't know if like anyone from the core system team is here and everything, but having just in general an instance swap system would be really nice. Like I remember I didn't play Lost Ark for super long, but Lost Ark literally had a drop down of all of the IP addresses that were currently available, and you could just swap to them. And the way that they kind of like at least somewhat prevented abuse is you couldn't swap to them more than once every like 10-15 seconds. That would be, I would argue even like, you know, maybe not even a queue, right? Because queues are, I'm a developer. I hate dealing with like queues and stuff. So I completely sympathize with that. But just the ability to swap to a different instance that is already empty and already has space, that would be really cool.
I think that if there was any core system that they could look at next, the map system would that be number one on my list? I'd be inclined to say yes, actually. It would either be that or the LFG system. Like but I think I'd probably say the map system would be more impactful. I guess the LFG would be almost intertwined in that, I suppose, to an extent, because it interacts with the map system. But yeah, for sure. Like, the ability to do that is huge. I think a major frustration that people have is like, wait, I can't get into the map. It's full, and I can't see what other maps are available potentially, right? There might be an empty one, but I don't know. I can't see it, right? It's not visible to me in some way. So yeah, like attacking that, particularly for End of Dragons, because the map caps are significantly lower. It was honestly weird to go back to the core map and go, wait, I can actually join. It's not full. Holy shit, this is crazy. So particularly with EOD, that would be a really good thing to attack and have a look at for sure.
It would probably require a very large rework, though. Like, I'm just like thinking, like, assuming everything is built on top of the map system, that would be pretty major refactor. So maybe just wishful thinking, but you brought it up. LFG would also be really nice if, like, let's say like the LFG showed default like IP instances and stuff, so you didn't have to have people like find, or some people like mark down the IP, other people don't, that sort of thing. Even, I don't know, I guess that would kind of go into like the whole queuing system, because I know some games have like automatic queues that you can join and then it'll just like populate them that way, but that might be, again, too much work.
Yeah, it is. It is a lot of work, right? It definitely is. And I think, you know, these world boss changes, they are significant, but they're not massive hyper reworks. I imagine if they were going to do something like the a rework to the map stuff, they'd almost want to do it a bit like alliances and have like open betas almost, and actually test it a lot, because I could see that really breaking the game, right? Like if you know, while they're changing over to this new system and causing some serious issues.
Yeah, I'm going to address one of the comments because I think this is actually a point to bring up. Is the difference between 60 and 80 people, I would argue, is actually not that much. I think most people, when they see a squad of 40 people all in the exact same place, they would think, wow, this map is so populated. I think a big problem with the EOD maps is that they're really big. So 60 people in a larger area means that there's significantly lower player density compared to, let's say, like Lion's Arch, right? Like Lion's Arch is a pretty small map and you have like 80 people in there. So then the player density just feels a lot higher. So I feel like I imagine there's probably logistical issues, right? It's just like with loading that many, I don't know, NPCs or like movement paths, all of that kind of stuff would probably be problematic if you let like, let's say like 400, 500 people into the same map and everything. But that, I think just the player density is like, these maps are just so big. It's like you can have, I would argue you could even have like 200 people in these maps, and depending on where you are, it would still feel like a ghost town.
Yeah. I think the big thing I have with a player cap is that it's just hard to get into maps sometimes, right? You know, like, look, let's be honest. Most people are running with like low character model limit. You're just watching a bunch of nameplates wiggle around a lot of the time anyway. And you're absolutely right about player density for sure, right? Like, you know, the maps are fucking huge. Particularly, I think Kaineng especially is actually insane. That map is vast. It is colossal. It's vertical. It's huge. It's got everything, right? And the meta event is not very exciting, which is disappointing, but that's okay. But for sure, yeah, I think the big thing is you just can't get in. I think it's a very frustrating experience for a new player as well. Like, you know, you just show up to a map and then you kind of can't join and can't really get into it, right? Which kind of feels bad. And all you have to do is fish. Then you can just start fishing. Yeah. What do you think, Sneb? What do you think about the new world bosses? And the map system. What are we thinking?
The map system?
Yeah, what do you think? Tell me.
Do you mean the old New World boss, or you just mean like the End of Dragons ones?
I just mean in general. I mean in general. I mean the old new ones. Tell me about the old New World bosses. And what do you think they should fix next? What should the core systems team, whatever they're named, what should they attack?
Question.
What's the next mission?
Oh, that's really tough. I think one of the challenges with developing something like this and going back and fixing things is now, relative to every other core world boss that hasn't had a fix like that, they're just so much better. Right? So it's like, go update everything now, but that's just not realistic. It's not realistic at all. So how do you pick one thing or another? I'm not sure. I'll be super biased and just say I think they should delete agony resistance next, and that should be the
that would be good. That would be a good one, yeah.
Big update to Fractals incoming. We have deleted agony resistance to help support new players getting into Fractals and
that would be very good.
That
would actually be really good. They should definitely do that.
Yeah. But as far as open world stuff, oh boy, I'm not even sure. I think I would just slowly trickle updates like that to other world bosses that are sort of in the mid game as well. But I don't want to. I'm so hesitant to make that my priority or anything because it just becomes this snowball of now you have to do everything so that it's all up to a standard that you just set. I think that's extremely challenging and almost unrealistic to expect. I think they did hit the main things, which are the new player experience. When you go and you're fighting that first world boss, you want it to be a little bit more engaging and help teach you the game. And so I think they've sort of hit a home run with in regards to that.
For sure. You know, what do you think about how high value would it be to go back and make each end story boss into a strike mission?
Oh, that would be so good, cool. Actually.
I don't know what they do with Zaitan. That's a little tricky.
Imagine if they made, and the end game players might hate me for saying this, but imagine if they made those strike missions fairly easy.
I think that's good.
That would be good. Yes, that'd be very good. Sorry, go ahead. I will not interrupt, Emi. Oh my goodness. I was gonna say,
I think actually a lot of I know there's like this idea that endgame players, we want everything to be hard. We want everything to be catered towards us. I think most people are pretty reasonable. Like even the more gung-ho, like super elitist players that I've met would acknowledge that having more content that is easier is not a bad thing, because that usually means that you're going to have more content that's harder later, right? Because like otherwise, why would they invest into this specific game mode? So I'm personally of the opinion that if they just added the strike missions of the same level as, like, let's say the Iceberg Saga ones, I think that's totally doable. I consider the Iceberg Saga ones to be super easy. You probably don't even need a healer for like half of them, or maybe just like a single healer for them. So if all of the story bosses were along that, or potentially even easier, and then it could be really cool if they just added CM versions of that, right? It's like you have the story bosses, the story version, and then the normal mode, and then the CM version. That would follow the same trend that you see all of the other strike missions doing.
That'd be sick. Big fucking pog, actually. You should definitely do that.
Damage equivalent to Frosty, or like difficulty equivalent to like Frosty.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. And then you just ramp
that
it
actually
up
gets a lot of people into instance content.
It does.
I think people don't necessarily, it doesn't all sort of, they don't clue into everything right away, nor should they be expected to. But it's a good introduction to 10-person content. It really is. I imagine if they had more stuff like that, where they could just jump in, kind of like the Iceberg Saga strikes, but maybe make them a little bit more, what's the word? Intentional with displaying certain mechanics, similar to how the EOD ones are, but make them even a little easier than the EOD ones. I think that could actually be a really positive thing. Essentially make them tutorials to mechanics, and then make CMs good to do for like more end game players.
Yeah. Definitely. I think it's really important to have the end game presented relatively early on, right? Because right now, the first strike mission you get is an Iceberg Saga, which is pretty weird. Right? That's a little unusual, because that's kind of the backbone of PvE in Guild Wars 2 now. So presenting it way earlier, like at every expansion, I think will be really, really good. Be excellent stuff. And, they could really use that time to make some of the fights, reuse the assets, right? Reuse some of the really cool models they have in the story. Because, it's funny, I was watching someone play through Path of Fire, and I was like, whoa. I actually remember that, you fight a giant robot tank in the story with Sahothan. It's extremely easy, obviously, because it's the story, but yeah, it's actually pretty cool. What a shame that you never see it ever again, and it's completely trivial. That is tragic. So if they change that would be very cool. They found some value out of all the old stuff. Because that's the one thing that I was kind of disappointed in, right? They never had like a Chak raid boss, or what are they called? Like the Balthazar robot people, the Forged, right? A Forged raid boss.
Oh, that would be sick.
Yeah, it'd be really sick, right? Like they had a boss out of that. Pretty cool. Oh yeah, go ahead, Emi.
I feel like you guys are constantly deferring to me now, and now I feel bad.
Yeah, we have to.
I think resource allocation, right, is like a really big deal. I feel like making a new boss completely from scratch requires a lot more design and a lot more thought than repurposing an old map or an old instance or something like that. So I think the idea of like making a new raid with like the forged and everything would be a lot less realistic than them saying, let's just make new dungeons or new fractals that kind of explore like this part more or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. And that would, of course, you know, that's why like reworking stuff would be pretty good, right? It's lower effort, less resources needed. You get the joy. Yeah, look, and look at this. Every rat jam mutes Emi. Unlucky. Unfortunate. World boss strikes. I mean, that would also be an option, actually. It'd be kind of cool. But certainly from the story, they already have loads of cool models and things that they could probably make something out of. And juice up a little bit. And, you know, I think they'd probably want to add challenge modes too, as he mentions. That'd be pretty cool. Yeah, there's one... Oh, yeah. Go ahead again. Go ahead again. It's getting funny at this point.
I was going to say, maybe... I potentially hot take. Mostly just I want to hear you guys' opinion on this. I remember watching a YouTube video one time where they were talking about recent MMOs versus old school MMOs, and one of the big things that they brought up is the emphasis on open world content versus instance content. Because I do agree with the video in some sense where like it is magical, you know, like in a way when you're playing a game, you're kind of minding your own business and then you stumble across this massive group of people that's taking down a boss, and it makes you kind of feel like you're a part of something bigger, right? Whereas like instance content is very deliberate. You specifically go out of your way to find a group. And obviously, yes, it's engaging in terms of gameplay, engaging in terms of the story that it's telling, that sort of thing. But it's not nearly as spontaneous, right? So I guess the question is like, you know, when it comes to world boss strikes or even let's say like the story stuff, what do you think about that? Should it be an instance content? Does that take away the magic of an open world experience?
Yes. I like open world content. I like it a lot, actually. I think that, you know, I think that's what I really like about Guild Wars 2. You know, if you look at other MMOs, they're not very massively multiplayer, are they? Right? You're playing with like 5 people in a dungeon or like 10, 20 people in a raid. It's not very massively multiplayer. And a lot of MMOs tend to be almost like solo, right? For a lot of the time, right? You're playing through a single player story experience a lot of the time. Whereas MMOs like Guild Wars 2, it's actually really cool, right? Because you actually do have this like massive, crazy experience, like in world versus world, right? Like in open world, fighting all these bosses. Yeah, I think a focus on that is really good. And I think games that do that are cool. They are cool. But they tend to be, a lot of games like that almost have to give you a little bit less guidance. And that tends to it tends to be a little bit harder to design them, I think, which is why people tend to go for instances, because you have more control, right? But in an open world, anything can happen. It's fiesta time, you know, it's wild. What do you think about that, Sneb? Do you like instance content or world bosses?
I mean, I like both. Ultimately, I think they serve very different play styles and engagement levels and commitment levels to the game and skill levels even. I think there's nothing cooler than walking, and it's really hard because I've played this game for so long to remember what it was like to hit that first world boss. But I imagine if you're a new player, you walk into Queensdale for the first time, and you just randomly walk into Shadow Behemoth. It's pretty cool. Like, it's really cool. And so I think that's something really special about Guild Wars 2. The other thing that makes it even more interesting is when suddenly people on the map are like, help, the monster is attacking. Like, get over here. I tagged up. Let's go. I need somebody over here. Like, if you ran into a random map that's doing Tequaddle for the first time and you had no idea what was going on, and suddenly people on map are like, man, the turrets, go north. I need people over there. I think it's really neat. It makes you feel like, holy crap, like we're doing something here. We got to take out this boss. I got to help. I got to help this commander. This person's got a tag. They're yelling at me. Like, what did I just wake up into? And I think that's really special and really cool about Guild Wars 2. That said, I think real friendships form, and not that they don't in open world, but I think you can really make lots of friends doing end game content. You have a consistent team and you feel a part of things in a different way. Instead of just walking into something, you're more organized, you're tactical. They serve very different demographics, and they're special in their own unique way.
Sure.
I just kind of wanted to bring it up because I do feel like a lot of the times when we think of endgame stuff, we really only think about like raids, fractals, strike missions, whatever other new stuff that ArenaNet comes up with. But I feel like a really, really big part, especially of like the casual player base, is experiencing those things in open worlds where they don't have to go out of their way to find it, but they kind of stumble upon it. And I feel like EOD's meta events was the closest we've gotten to that in a really, really long time. Like I remember when I did the Suwon meta event for the first time, there was actually a very, very real chance that we would fail, right? And I think for me, so like having face rolls all of the content for quite some time now, that was really exciting, right? And I remember even as we were just kind of doing it, there would be people that were just that had just started like the game and had gotten to EOD just because they wanted to see what's happening. They were like, why do you have a symbol above your head? What's going on? Why are there so many people? That sort of thing. And then they were able to join us and they had a lot of fun too. So yeah, it would be cool if they had more stuff like that in open world, because I feel like there's not many open world bosses, right? Like in EOD, I think there's like events, but those are usually over within a certain amount of time. I feel like outside of the meta events, there's no like individual bosses that you can kill.
Yeah, they hyped up the Naga, right, where you could dodge the waves, but like no one does that event. Unlucky. But yeah, I mean, you know, what about the people who did Dragon's End 15 times and failed every time? That's toxic. You can't say you enjoy that. I've heard people say, I have spent 40 hours on the map and I lost every single time. The dragon won. The dragon wins. I saw a screen cap actually the other day. 3 minutes left on the clock on Suwon. The boss was over 50%. That's tough.
What?
Yeah, over. I mean,
it must have been a group that just did the escort events, right? Like if they just do the escort events and then they don't actually get to the boss.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Bad energy was a huge issue at the beginning of Suwon. I actually want to correct the record on this, by the way, because there was a big debate about this, and I said it's not RNG, and a lot of people said it was. I was right, by the way, just so everyone's super aware of that. It was never RNG focused. As long as you played sufficiently well, no amount of bad RNG would make you fail, flat out. RNG was typically very impactful, but only in very mediocre groups that weren't very well prepared and weren't very well organized compared to how well they could be organized. Right, but there you go. Well, you get 9 tails, so that's actually toxic, but you won't. The thing is, you never will if you play sufficiently well. This is the point. This is the nuance that people didn't get about this, is that you won't. It is impossible for that to happen under the assumption you play well enough. The boss will not have enough time to perform that attack. That was my claim, and that claim was 100% true, by the way.
I just think it's tough, right? I mean, the expectation when you go into an open world map and do a meta event for most people is you just show up and you win, right? So it kind of sucks to go and lose. It's difficult. I think a lot of people are like, what? Like, this is so, it is a step up. The trick is that if you are relatively organized, if you make subgroups and you understand those sort of foundational combat and squad components to the game, and you have a few people willing to lead and instruct and copy paste messages into the chat, then it's totally doable. The challenge, though, is that when somebody gets to that point, you kind of have to assume that they've been playing the game a while. I mean, sure, I guess they theoretically could have teleported directly into Dragon's End using one of those waypoint things. But what are they even called? They're like express waypoints? But anyway, I guess they could do that as they're in their first hour of gameplay. But most people are going to have played through the story, played through some other content, and then they get to that last map. If they get to that last map and they don't know anything about any of the things that I just talked about, it's going to be really hard. It is. It's going to feel very difficult.
It is challenging.
And that's where the community comes in, and we try to help people and instruct people and do our best. But ultimately, the changes like they've made to those beginning world bosses will greatly impact people when they get to things like Dragon's End in the future. We're just experiencing some growing pains now, I would think.
I think that's a good way of putting it. Growing pains is definitely true, because I know a lot of, like, especially the people who have left the game claiming that, you know, like there's not enough content, or like they're kind of like messing up a lot of the stuff. I try to remind them that this is all foundational work, right? It's like there's no way they can add more raids or more strike missions or super difficult content into the game unless they clean up a lot of the existing bugs, until they kind of clean up, like, you know, the dominance of certain classes in the meta, or like even small things like, you know, the instabilities and fractals, for example, right? How some of them really just feel unfun. And if they're unfun, people aren't going to play them. And if people aren't going to play them, then they're not going to even get to like the super high end stuff. So it's like, yeah, growing pains is definitely true. And I really like that we're seeing it in most game modes. I say maybe not everyone, but Wolversword beta restructuring is going to be soon. So hopefully that'll add Wolversword back into the mix. But at the very least, I think for PvE, and I think even in a way PvP, I think they've been definitely looking at the things to make it feel better.
You know, I kind of want to round things out here. You know, we've got through all the topics. I want to end it on something that might be very controversial, actually. And it's related to this map system stuff we've been talking about for a while. And it's going to be, you know, little spicy. I'm curious what people are going to think of this. Like, what would be a good way to justify the investment in a really major rework of the map system? Like, what's the payoff from ArenaNet's perspective to do this? And the reason I'm talking about this is I'm going to bring up another system that they very heavily reworked and ended up monetizing, and that's specifically build templates. And, you know, I've been thinking about this for a while, actually. I'm like, what would they do? Like, how do you think people would react if they did rework the map system, but they somehow monetized it? Like, what does that look like? If they add more MTX, do they just get completely eviscerated? Because I can't think of any way that they could do that without getting utterly destroyed, right? Like,
what do you mean by the maps system?
So I don't know. Let's imagine there's a queue, right? And you can like pay to be in like the premium queue or something like that. I don't fuck.
What is this,
listen,
Disney World?
I don't know, dude. Okay, I'm just saying some random shit. Okay, come on.
Please buy your express pass now to skip all of the peasants to your left.
Well, I mean, the thing is, though, let's be honest here. Isn't that literally what gold gems to gold is? Isn't that literally paying to skip what everyone else is doing? That's what you're doing. You're paying to skip. You know, you're saying, oh, look at that idiot. He's going to grind the game for 100 hours. I'm going to swipe and get it in 2 seconds. No? Like, you know, that will be... I don't know, like, because I don't know. Is there a better way? Are there any other ways where you could monetize it? Because I mean, like Emi said it herself, right? And I completely agree. It would be like a massive rework to do this, and I think it's really good. But ultimately, I think ArenaNet's going to need something on the bottom line, right? Like, I'm not saying that's a good idea, by the way. I actually think a queue system like that would be. I don't know. Honestly, I think that, you know, ArenaNet would be destroyed. I think they would. The PR from that would be so catastrophic, it might like destroy everything. But still, right? I don't know.
Here's how you make everyone mad all at once, though. You sell them a gizmo.
Ooh.
That has a shooting star. But it's like 100 times cooler than the PvP ones.
Yeah.
And then whenever they go into a map, a list comes up of the other people in the map that they want to get, you know, that they want to get into. And they get to like grant. Yeah, they get to like grant kill a person, and they're booted from the map, and then they appear over their corpse. And it's available in World versus World.
Yeah.
I was thinking more like, imagine if there was like a gizmo where when you interacted with it, it showed all of the IP addresses. I thought that's what you were trying to get at. I was like, that would be so blatantly monetizing the system. It would be very offensive. I was going to say, they can do it in more subtle ways, right? Because at the end of the day, gold to gems is mostly so people can skip the time to like generate the gold. And because of that, we have gold sinks in the game, right? Like, you know, the TP tags or waypointing, that sort of thing. Very, I guess, like subtle way of doing it where a lot of people wouldn't notice is if they added like you had to pay gold every time you had to swap instances. Like maybe not a lot. Maybe like think like 50 silver, right? If you wanted to swap instances or something like that. It's not enough for people to think, oh, I need to swipe my credit card for that. But 50 silver is a lot for someone who isn't farming, you know, like that's 1/4 of a strike mission. So
that's actually big, because that's the exact same thing, right? You essentially are
it's the exact same thing.
Yeah, because gold and real money are the same thing in Guild Wars 2, right? So if they do that, yes, that essentially actually does generate them revenue if they attach a gold price to it. That's it. See, look, Emi with the giant brain, huge.
I'm not saying they should do this. Just as enough, I don't think they should do this.
Emi's in favor. She loves it. Okay, we're paying money to change maps now. Let's go.
But yeah, I mean, I feel like that would be like the most realistic way to implement it, because that's basically what we're doing with like waypoints and stuff, right? It's like you're paying for the convenience to not have to use your mount to run across the map. So, yeah.
It's an interesting one, right? You know, that's because I think that you do have to kind of put on your ArenaNet goggles sometimes, right? And you've got to think, how could they justify investing all of this effort into the system, right? They need to find some way to do that, right? And obviously, I would obviously not want them to do this in like a horrible, like predatory and kind of scuffed way. Like if they did build templates again, I'm gonna cry, right? I'm so build templates are a genuine abomination. I'm actually planning on doing a kind of 0 to hero series and unlocking all like the gem store upgrades and stuff just by playing the game without spending any money pretty soon. Ooh. And honestly, build templates are going to be that thing that go, wow, okay, yeah, this is actually a bit of a black mark on ANET's record. Wow, holy shit, right? Isn't justification the game is a better map system queue enough though? No, it isn't. Do you work for free? I'm sure at your job that you could say, isn't the justification you're performing some kind of service and providing value to the human community? Yes. Is that good enough for you? Hell no, right? No way is that enough for you. Are you kidding me? Of course not. No, it isn't.
I think you should be able to pay $1,000 and delete someone else's character or ban them for a month.
Ooh, yeah, that's good. That is good, actually. I like that. Yeah, I think now
you can like buy the well of toxicity and you toss their character into it and it like melts them. And then that person's logged out of the map immediately. You can take their place in the meta, get all credit and their participation, depending on if they're in HOT maps. Yeah. And they log out and their character's gone. And they contact support and they just go, I don't know.
Dude, holy shit. Wait, you could buy Ally and kill proof with real money. That's how they monetize raids, is you can buy more insights and more kill proof.
Oh gosh,
that's good. I like that. Yeah, that's I enjoy that. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Is there? Okay, I'm just super curious actually, because I would actually really like a system like this to be in the game, and I felt they would have to somehow get a little bit of juice out of it. I'm really struggling to see a version of that wouldn't actually get them eviscerated by gaming press, right? I think they'd get destroyed. They'd get utterly obliterated.
How much does that matter? Like it does. I guess it really depends on severity, right? If they're like truly, absolutely 1,000,000% annihilated because of some choice, then yeah, sure. But build templates didn't do anything. I don't think. It doesn't feel like they did. They still kept them in the game, and I don't think they really ever mentioned anything about that.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. I just don't feel like it's that impactful.
I mean, yeah, but okay. I think. Oh, dude. Holy shit! You're making me bite a few bullets here, Sneb. Okay, and this feels bad. I think that. Do you know why that happened, Sneb? It's because when build templates came out, Guild Wars 2 was like the least relevant MMO in the entire industry. Nobody cared, right? About Guild Wars 2, dude. If you looked at all of like the most popular MMOs, like on YouTube and shit, Guild Wars 2 wasn't even there, right? They would have forgotten the game even existed, right? At that point, when build templates came out. It wasn't true. The game still had a decent population, obviously, right? But it was build templates came out in like the no one cares phase, right? Which is probably why it didn't really get any kind of coverage. Also, I think people are very immunized to relatively aggressive microtransactions that I don't think it's even that remarkable, to be honest. Whereas I think that the map stuff would definitely, like, wait, you have to pay to join a map? I mean, come on, right? That's a headline, right? You know, like, let's go. Let's get some ad revenue, like, you know, on our website.
You have to buy 20 NFTs and you have to combine them like Exodia to get into the map.
Hell yeah. Yeah. Isn't making a better game justification though? Otherwise, why do they still do balance patches? Well, they actually didn't for a while, right? Like, the justification for balance patches is probably, ultimately it will be revenue based, right? They think it will make them more money, obviously. But the other thing with balance patches is it doesn't require you to do like a massive rework of the system. It's why we aren't getting like major ability reworks every patch. Because yeah, that shit's expensive. Devs, development guys, it's quite hard, right? By the way, dev work is kind of hard. Game dev is really hard. Game dev on a 10-year-old game with a zillion complexity to it, yeah, that's really, really difficult, actually. So a lot of this stuff, yeah, it's going to have to be justified in some way from a financial perspective. And it's also going to take a very long time or not happen if it isn't. Otherwise, yes, we'd see reworks. Do you think ArenaNet are stupid? I think this is actually something that people don't get. Do you guys think ArenaNet actually don't know that Firebrand is horribly designed? Do you think they actually don't know that? Because I can guarantee
don't ask Chat.
like, okay, yeah, maybe this is a bad question, right? Okay, okay.
It's a very loaded question.
Yeah.
Teapot, okay. No!
Yeah, well, yeah. But look, I can guarantee you that ArenaNet are aware that there are issues with the game. ArenaNet are aware of the design problems. They know what they're doing. I know that people meme on ArenaNet, blah, 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 fuck ArenaNet, whatever, right? Okay, but at the end of the day, I actually do think they are competent, right? It's just that game development is very, very difficult. It's very expensive. It takes a lot of time, and they have to make sacrifices and make decisions based on what they actually have at their disposal with the way the game is playing out. For example, you know, final topic here maybe. I'm segueing away from this very quickly. Do you guys see that ArenaNet are making another game? Unreal Engine 5? That's kind of cool.
Pretty interesting. Guild Wars 1 remastered.
Yeah, they've been advertising for a few positions, actually, for an unannounced project on Twitter, publicly advertising this, actually, and on their website, obviously, for some developers on Unreal Engine 5, which is super interesting, actually. And also they're recruiting a few more devs for Guild Wars 2, actually. Like, more encounter design. Very cool, actually. And, yeah. No, I mean, no, gamers, I hate, no, this is not like speculation. This is actually true. I'll see if I can find the Reddit thread. This is not like a speculation meme.
Yeah, there's a link.
Yeah, there's actually a link to it.
Arguably, isn't that kind of a good thing? Like, I'm thinking about Final Fantasy. I haven't played it that much, but I have some friends that are super intimately acquainted with it. And they say that Final Fantasy uses money from other games and also vice versa to fund each other. So if other games are making money, that money is probably not going to go back, like, you know, in a one-to-one mapping back to that old game. It'll probably help fund all of the projects. So more eyes on ArenaNet, in my opinion, the better.
I think it's actually good for the company and like the employees as well. Because if you've been working at a game company and you only work on one game forever, you might start to feel a little bit, I don't know, burnt out of doing the same thing all the time. So new projects and getting new opportunities to work on new things with different tech is also a really positive thing for the organization.
Yeah. Can say from personal experience in a lot of the jobs and stuff that I've worked, it's always like the same company, but they usually fund like multiple projects. And then when one project is done, they pull engineers to and from different ones. So
Emi, do you think that's because I've always operated under the assumption that that's because they want to retain you and not make you bored out of your mind? Do you think that that's part of the purpose?
Functionally, no. I think it just takes a long time to onboard people onto the same system. So like, for example, right now I'm working for Amazon. It took me 6 months to figure out what the heck is going on in there because it is an extremely complex like web service, like behind the scenes. Having one person switch from one service in that to another one takes a lot less time and a lot less resources and a lot less money than trying to hire someone completely new, and especially with the risk that they might leave, right? So it's like, I imagine it's very similar for a lot of other companies as well. It's like, you know, they want to have people that are already familiar with like, I guess like the, I don't know, tools or services or whatever it is that they're working on, or even just like the way the company operates. Because, for example, I used to work at a government contracting like company. Yeah, so it's like someone who's never had experience with that before. You can be like the best software dev in the world, but if you don't have experience with that, it's going to take time to onboard you. So I imagine it's a similar thing again, just like with ArenaNet. If they have multiple games and stuff, I feel like it's probably not going to be the case where everything is completely different. That might happen, but I don't know. So yeah.
Yeah.
I would also like this is total segue and random, but I'd just like to point out that Teapot is leeching Shadow Behemoth and forcing all the new players to do Shadow Behemoth.
You know what?
For
you know what?
This is toxic behavior.
I am actually tagging right now. I am actually I've turned on the UI. I'm gonna go and tag it right now. I'm gonna tag it and then leech on stream, live, doing it right now on my Heal Tempest. Let's go.
I just see in the background all these portals, like people running around with minions, and Teapot's just like, oh, tranquil place here, isn't it? Nice to see you all working on something together. I enjoy doing it.
I want to be clear, I enjoy leeching. Right? I enjoy leeching. I do it all the time. I used to do, look, you'll love me, Sneb. I used to do Chat Garrett and Octovine leech on 5 accounts.
Oh, my
Every day. Every day. And you know what, Sneb? There was nothing anyone could do to stop me. I did that.
You never got the infusion, though, did you?
Yeah. No, I didn't.
How does it feel?
I made a lot of gold. Sneb.
Oh.
Yeah. I became enriched by my leeching powers. Oh, yeah.
Anyway, back to so, I mean, you were saying that generally it's just because it's easier to transition people because they already know the tech. Okay.
At least that's what I think. Yeah. Maybe it's not true, but no.
Well, yeah. At the end of the day, there's a few things about anything, but video games in particular. I think people like new stuff, right? Like no matter how good something is. In general, the older it gets, the less people play it, right? Or like the less hype around that thing there is, right? I think that's a general rule, you know. I think that happens with TV shows as well. Like the first season typically gets really high viewer numbers, and it will kind of like fall off. Even if the show gets better or stays the same quality, it will fall off anyway a lot of the time, I think. And it's the same with video games. So I think it's good that ArenaNet may have something extra. Because ultimately, if the company does well, that's good news for Guild Wars 2, right? Like, if they get another product out and they're able to make a shit ton of money, well, then, hey, I imagine they're going to reinvest that into hiring more developers, right? Hey, maybe a bit more marketing as well. Oh, yeah. Could be very cool. And potentially that will end up working out well for Guild Wars 2. So I think it is good. I hope it works out for them this time, right? I'm actually very glad that they haven't been totally scared off from it, because obviously it kind of ended in disaster the last time they were running additional projects with, I think, was it like 1/3 of the company being laid off and some pretty bad, pretty bad optics in the kind of wider, the wider gaming sphere, right? So I think it's good that they're actually getting onto that. I think that could be very interesting to see what they come up with, right? With some modern technology and some new ideas. Could be fun.
Imagine if the game is like virtual reality. I can't even say this with a straight face. And you're a script, and all you do is gamble.
You need to be a script to do that.
It's an MMO, but you're all script, and you just like walk around this cave, and you just like gamble all of your.
I like that. That's big. Some big ecto gambling right there.
You role play the script. Yeah.
Wow. I like that. And that's pretty big.
If you're broke, it becomes just open PvP, so you can steal others' ectos, so that you can gamble them. And then aggressive microtransactions where you just have to keep buying the ectos.
Look, honestly, a lot of the games that are super successful are often very simple. So, I'm not saying that they're going to add Scrit Ecto Gamble Simulator, right? But I could actually see them developing something very simple, right? And not something super crazy. And there is like a very slim chance that it could be they're looking at saying like Guild Wars 3. Although I personally don't think that will actually happen. I think if ArenaNet do another game, I'd be very surprised if it was an MMORPG, actually. That would really surprise me if that was the case. I'd almost be surprised if it was an online game. I've always felt that a lot of what ArenaNet do, they almost want to make a single-player RPG. I could definitely see them doing that. Because if you look at what they've done with Living World, yeah, Living World is basically single-player. Right? It's single-player story content, so I could certainly see that. Oh, it is confirmed online? That's interesting, actually. Maybe like an online co-op game or something like that? Yeah. But I'm expecting something a bit simpler, like from ArenaNet. I don't think it's going to be like an Omega, like huge, massive-scale project like an MMORPG. It'll be something different, which is pretty cool, I think. It'll be interesting to see what they do.
Guild Wars Battle Royale.
Ooh.
But you're all script and it's only script. It's set in like a post-apocalyptic world where like everybody died because they were too busy AFK Dragon's End. And now it's just script. Suwon really took over. And the script take over, and they're just constantly gambling.
Yeah, it says it's based on an existing online fantasy RP. Yeah, and that what they're communicating there is that it's based in the Guild Wars universe, right? Like it's based in the Guild Wars universe. That's not necessarily that it's going to be an online game, right? Guild Wars 1 remake? I don't think they would ever do that, actually. And do you know why, actually? Because I think Guild Wars 1 actually stands on its own 2 feet very well now. This might sound a little insane, but I think Guild Wars 1 has aged very gracefully, actually, to be perfectly honest with you. Like, surprisingly. Some parts of it maybe a little bit less so, right? But I think, looks ugly. I don't think so. Like,
really? What?
I really like how Guild Wars 1 looks, actually. I think it's a very pretty game. Obviously, texture resolution isn't as good as, modern video games, but I think it's stylized really well. Actually, I think a lot of older games stand up pretty well in general. I think, like, people call me crazy for this, but I actually like WoW Classic. I like how RuneScape looks. And I mean old school RuneScape. Yeah, I'm serious. I actually like how that game looks. I think it has a very distinct style, right? You'll immediately notice what it looks like. It's a well-designed game, right? I don't think graphical fidelity is everything that makes a game look good. I think that's a part of it, obviously, but I think I think the more important thing, at least for me, is the art style and art direction, rather than like just the raw fidelity of like how many pixels you've got on your textures and RTX.
What if this other project based in the Guild Wars 2 universe is actually just Super Adventure Box?
Someone mentioned that. That would be so cool. We finally get a World 3 and 4.
No. No. They just go, you know what? This is good enough to just make its own thing.
It is. I think it is.
It's pretty good, yeah.
I don't think that's unreasonable.
Really cool.
Holy shit. They drop it. They create World 3 and they drop it as a standalone as well. And sell it for like $5. I could actually see that. Nah, they would never do that. What would be the point? That is because you could literally just do free-to-play Guild Wars 2 and play SAB. I guess it would be permanent, though. You could always play SAB. But, nah. Like, why would they? Nah, because we're talking about meme shit, right? It's going to be look, I feel like we're actually disrespecting ArenaNet. We're like, oh, they're gonna do a meme game, guys. Haha, meme. Like, but no, they're a serious development company. They're actually gonna make a game.
What do you think? Okay, this is like half meme, okay, but what if they had a game that was on mobile that interacted with Guild Wars 2 in some way, but wasn't Guild Wars 2? I get that they have like Lineage 2 mobile and that sort of stuff, but what if they had just its own game that interacted in some way? So maybe you could like earn gold by participating in little mini games or something on your phone.
Do you know what
that would be really dangerous, because then microtransactions would probably leak into there, and I think the mobile game community would be a lot more okay with it. So
I mean, we already have MTX. The whales are already here. Have you not seen the 1.6k gem cat released recently? We're already in the whale zone. But anyway, Let's go ahead and wrap things up. I think it's time to stop now before things get even more insane than they already are. Okay. What a tea time. I don't even know what the hell that was, but that was something. It was definitely something. And now it's over, right? So you can leave some comments and tell us exactly what's going on, right?
It's Wednesday, my dudes.
It is Wednesday, right?
Yes,
I like that. Yeah, Sneb, he's with it. He's switched on, right? He's with the kids. He knows all the memes, right? All the hottest memes, and the dankest memes are all here on TeaTime. So good job there, Sneb. Love to see that. Okay, there will be more TeaTimes later on at some point. But anyway, thanks for watching, everyone. Let's talk about some of these incredible hosts here. Okay, it's first up, it's Sneb. It's the goose. He's got a hat on right now. Not the headband, because he's actually going to wash it for charity tomorrow. What's going on, Sneb?
Oh yeah. Well, I'm Sneb. Make statics on the NA server, and there's 45 of them, and people have a good time. They're recruiting for an HTCM static soon. Lots of EOD strike statics, POF statics, HOT, full clear statics, you name it. We got people that want to group up. We're basically Tinder for Guild Wars 2 NA rating. Very specific. We help set you up with the group. You plan the date. So that's what we do. You can find me at twitch.tv/Snebzor, SNEBZOR. And same on Twitter and other stuff. So yeah, see you there.
That's big. Okay. And expression host in the chat. Wait, is it working? It is working. Okay, good. I was a little worried there for a moment, okay? But we also have Emi, okay? We're trying to... Emi is a social experiment on TeaTime, saying how many episodes does it take to descend into madness, right? How is that going?
It's starting to get there. I've been reading some of the YouTube comments. Some of them are really dank. Yeah. Anyways, my name is Emi. I do stuff also on NA, mostly with endgame PvE. So I do things like fractals, strike missions, dungeons, raids, all of that kind of stuff. And I like to focus a bit more on the new player experience. So doing things like trainings or doing lectures, or I've even done a few one-on-one sessions where we actually walk through like logs and kind of people's individual gameplay, that sort of stuff. So yeah, that's kind of like what I'm up to. I literally took PTO so I could be on the TeaTime today. So Teapot, you got to reimburse me for that.
Whoa. Okay, you're gonna have some of the ad revenue.
Nice.
So make sure to watch the ads, chat. Okay, do not skip them. Click them. Okay. Turn off ad block and go back and watch it again once you've got here. But okay, thank you very much indeed. And look, see, there was no interruption there as well. See, we've learned. Me and Sneb, we're doing better. We promise to improve. Okay, we're toxic. We always cut each other. It's because we're used to arguing too much, right? On our little stream segments, right? Where we hate each other and just flame each other. But anyway, you can also follow the stream. Hit the follow button, subscribe, hand over all of your money, send me your in-game gold too for Master of the Arena. And actually, this TeaTime, it honestly might not be uploaded before Master of the Arena, but if it is, Master of the Arena is this Friday, 29th, 30th, and 31st. Insane PvP action. Wow. Definitely don't want to miss that. It's going to be very well produced, very entertaining with a whole bunch of casters. We're going to be raising money for charity at the same time with Cure a Disease. So that's very, very cool stuff. Okay, definitely check that out. Hope to see all of you there. All of you. Every single one of you. On the weekend. Because I've been looking forward to this for a long time. Like the team at Hardstuck, we've worked extremely hard to make it extremely cool. And I think we have actually succeeded in doing just that. So even if you're not into PvP, definitely check that out. This weekend and see what's going on. See what the best team in the entire world is. But that is going to be it for us. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. And, of course, thank you to my two wonderful hosts for showing up despite it being a little bit of an unusual day for TeaTime here on a Wednesday. So thank you so much to Emi and Sneb for joining. It was an incredibly entertaining one, and I'm certainly looking forward to see what everyone in the chat and in the comment section also thinks about it. So thank you so much for watching, everyone. I will see you in just a moment because we're going to talk about the patch notes a little bit more, and I'm going to talk about Master of the Arena because I'm hyped, and you should be hyped as well. But yes, until next time, good evening, my friends, and I'll see you next time. Ooh.